Mr. Hash bought some plates at a yard sale. After arriving home, he found that 2/3 of the plates were chipped, half were cracked, and 1/4 were chipped and cracked. Only 4 plates were without chips or cracks. How many plates did he buy in all? We are going to look at a visual solution. We're going to start with 24, a rectangle containing 24 squares, or a 4 by 6 rectangle. The dimensions of the rectangle really don't matter. As long as I have 24 little squares, I should be all set. Now, why is it important to have 24 little squares? Because the fractions I'm dealing with are these. Let's write them. 2/3. Well, let me make my font a little smaller. Excuse me. Okay, the fractions we are dealing with are 2/3, 1/2, and 1/4. Okay, 24 is divisible by 3, 24 is divisible by 2, 24 is divisible by 4. So that's why it's a good choice. I can easily represent 2/3 here, 1/2 here, and 1/4 here. That's why 24 squares is a good choice to represent your whole. Let's go back and fill in some of the details from the question. According to the question, 2/3 of the plates were cracked. Okay, so 1/3 of 24 is 8. 2/3 has to be 16. 2/3 of 24 is 16. Alright, that's why I shaded 16 squares. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, plus 6, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. So the red region represents 2/3 of 24. Let's erase all this. Move on to the next piece. Okay, the question also says half of the plates were chipped, and we all know that half of 24, half of 24 is 12. So I shaded 12 squares here. That represents half. However, the next part is kind of complicated. The question says 1/4 of the plates were cracked and chipped, and 1/4 of 24 is 6, because 4 times 6 is 24. 1/4 of 24 is 6. So let's take a fresh rectangle, 4 by 6 rectangle, and fill in the details and see what we can do with it. So 1/4 of the plates were both cracked and chipped. This is my slide from the previous this is the previous slide. So let's work on this area from the beginning. Okay, I'm going to use red to represent the cracked plates. So as before, I'm going to shade in 2/3 of 24 is 16. I'm going to shade in 16 of the squares. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, and 16. Just like here, nothing new. Now, half of the plates were chipped. That's fine, but half of 24 is 12, and I don't have 12 squares here. There will be an overlap between the red shading and the blue shading. Now, this part of the question is kind of crucial. Let me erase that. Let me take a smaller. Change the line thickness. Okay. This is very important now. 1/4 of the plates were both chipped and cracked, and that is 1/4 times 24 is 6. Okay. Now, that tells me 6 of these squares are both cracked and chipped. So in other words, 6 of the squares will be painted blue and red at the same time. So let's do that. So I'm going to take these 6 squares because they're both chipped and cracked. Now, that's not enough. Altogether, I need 12 squares to represent my chipped plates, and I know 6 of those 12 squares would be sharing the same squares as the cracked plate. So I need to find 6 from here, and I'm going to just go with this. Now, go back and check your work. Altogether, we shaded, how many squares were shaded red? Altogether, we had 16 squares shaded red. That's okay. How many squares were shaded blue? Altogether, 12. And 12 squares should have been shaded blue according to this picture, so we're good. Now, the question says, 4 plates were neither chipped nor cracked. And this is what I'm left with. Let's change the color to green. This is what I'm left with. Just 2 squares. They represent the plates that were intact, that were fine, and there were 4 plates that were neither chipped nor cracked. So each square must represent 2. 2 and 2, 4. Now I can find out my final answer. My final answer has to be 24. I have 24 squares. The question asks how many plates were purchased. I have 24 squares, and each square is really worth 2. 24 squares should be worth 48. So my final answer is 48.